The issue has not really been addressed directly. Historically, the issue of gender-based violence, people believe it's taken care of in broader legislation and conventions on discrimination. The idea being there should be no discrimination at work, and that should cover any kind of violence that's based on gender. So it's seen as a piece of discrimination, gender-based discrimination. However, I think gender-based violence can't be subsumed under legislation on discrimination more general, because the use of violence at work to keep people captive or to force people to do things is a whole other level of complexity and threats that people face that need to be addressed more directly. Most people would think they're supposed to go to their supervisor. The problem is if they're being threatened by their supervisor, that can be problematic. If you look at cases of sexual harassment or rape or domestic violence, oftentimes those cases are taken, if they're taken to the courts, those are also underreported, but if they're taken to the courts, a lot of times the woman is put on trial. So now take that case to the workplace where the woman has to go up against her supervisor, who may have more credibility or more support by more people in the organization. I think she's going to feel even more threatened to come forward to the courts and to file that complaint, because she's going to be seen as having other issues at work. A lot of times, if women are being sexually harassed and they start to come forward, the next thing they know, they're being told, oh, you're not producing fast enough, or you're making mistakes at this part of your job, so that supervisors end up kind of pushing them into a corner. I think it's a very, very vulnerable position to be in, to be reporting sexual harassment and sexual violence at work. Global brands have codes of conduct with modules on anti-discrimination, and no form of discrimination should happen in the workplace. They instruct all their suppliers to make sure this isn't happening. But again, if you subsume violence at work under this rubric of discrimination, you're not really proactively trying to address it, trying to raise awareness about it and create sensitivities around it. A lot of sexual violence at work starts with inappropriate touching. There needs to be zero tolerance for that, because you can't really stop the much worse forms of it if you don't start with that level of consciousness and awareness. If the ILO can be pushed forward to create a convention on violence against women and men in the world of work, that convention will begin to set a tone for all countries that are members of the ILO, that they need to specifically address the issue of violence at work, and especially gender-based violence at work. Once you create that convention, and really it needs to be a convention, because then all the countries that are members of the ILO will be looking at, what does that mean for our legislation? Do they have to make the decision of, do they sign it, do they ratify it, do they adopt it? And then that pushes legislation forward, and it changes the legal frameworks in many other countries once you have a convention that lays out what binding commitment to these issues looks like.
Great. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.